The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
You reached the Benjamin Dixon Show voicemail. Leave your message and we'll respond live on air.
Yo, Ben. How's it going, my brother? This is Bryce from Philly. So, I don't think you suck, number one. Number two, I get your points about everything that's going on with imperialism and about, our country's mistakes and problems, because we've done a lot, but there's other countries too. And it's bigger than the American problem, and I agree with you about that. So I guess my question would be, if China is getting something out of this with America, what is, I guess, the 3 or 4 things they're getting out of it, we're getting out of it, and what is that leading to, especially knowing that China pretty much damn near owns the country because of our massive debt. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bryce, my brother, thanks so much for the call. This is Phone Call Friday. Sorry, the show is a little bit late today. I'm going to try something here. I don't think my wife listens to the show. I don't think she listens on a regular. I know she's listened before, but she doesn't listen on the regular. So I'm going to tell you guys, I'm planning a surprise party for her 40th birthday, which is Sunday. And I've got her family coming into town and my family's coming into town, and her sorority sisters sent videos, and her local sorority sisters are all going to be at this dinner on Sunday. And so that's what I've been tied up doing, working on today. So that's why the show is late. Thanks so much for the call. So what are some of the things that China is looking for or getting out of the deal? So let's be clear on some things. Like, you cannot deny that China is a capitalist state. You cannot. They have as much of a command economy as the United States. Like the United States, we don't have a free market here. We have capitalism that is coordinated by our government. Our government intervenes in everything. The only thing that we don't do, like China does, is manipulate our currency. That's it. But we don't have to manipulate our currency when the entire system is pegged to our currency. But that's an entirely different conversation. But we simply, by virtue of our interdependence, China gets from us what we get from China. We get a level of stability, number one. We get growing economies that they believe ostensibly could just grow in perpetuity, right? And anytime you have a growing economy, sure, you help your middle class. Sure, you help alleviate poverty. Those are the same things that we describe about capitalism here in the United States. Like the Americans today have it better than any other time, and it's because of capitalism, because we got rid of poverty. That's what's happening in China. So they get that. But most of all, let's not get it twisted. There is an elitist class in China, and they are benefiting from the spoils. There are capitalists in China who own the means of production in China. They are getting the spoils of capitalism. If you can't accept that, then I don't know what plane of existence you're treading in, right? Because there are capitalist lords of capital who are benefiting from the labor of billions, a billion Chinese people. Period. So they're getting the same thing we are. Your middle class is ostensibly growing. Your poverty is not as bad as what poverty used to be. Your elites are getting enriched. The GDP is growing. The national product is growing. Foreign direct investment is growing. They're getting all those things. And so they are getting that. And then now also with that wealth comes power. With that wealth comes the ability to spend on defense, the ability to spend on military might. And that's why they have 2.5 million people in their army. 2 million are standing members, 500,000 in their reserve. And that's how they are able to project power, just like the United States. They're getting the same thing out of this as the United States. That's why we're not going to go to war with them. They are not the vanguards of the socialist revolution. They're not even socialists. They're capitalists. And they are building an empire that's going to stand right next to the United States. They have no need nor the capacity to destroy the United States without destroying themselves. They're collaborators on this international stage. So that's what they're getting out of it, man. That's 100% what they're getting out of it. They have a private healthcare system like we do here. They don't have a single payer Medicare for all system there. You could fall through the gaps in China. You know, it's just with the advancements or with the money that they have been making from capitalism, poverty in China today is not like poverty was 50 years ago in China. And so if because of those things you believe somehow that China is socialist, then what you're really doing is making arguments for capitalism. You're literally making arguments for capitalism. And I thought they were the antithesis of one another. Okay, next voicemail.
Hi, Benjamin. This is Jack in Milwaukee. I love your thoughts on everything, including trying to persuade South Carolina Biden voters to go for Bernie. I'm from the Chicago suburbs, so I have no idea what would be best, but I'm wondering what you think of this pitch. Bernie is a well-known, accomplished old-timer, knows his stuff, he's unshakable, and Trump's not going to hurt him. So he shares those perceived strengths of Biden's. What do you think? Thanks, Benjamin.
Okay. Yeah. I see where you're going there. So basically you want to establish with anyone that you talk to, and we are doing that strategy. We are talking to everyone we can and convincing everyone we can why Biden is not the right guy. And in that conversation, the last caller, thank you for the call, is saying that what we should do is convince them that the things that they value about Joe Biden are literally best personified in Bernie. You know, the fact that he is a stalwart. That's a very difficult word for me to say, stalwart. But anyway, he is unshakable. He's not going to be budged. He's not going to flap under pressure of the debates. He's going to excel. I mean, and you can see that in the Wednesday night, Tuesday night debates that they had. When Elizabeth Warren was prevaricating over whether or not taxes would go up underneath the Medicare for All system, Bernie Sanders came around the corner with so much strength and so much clarity that he helped save Elizabeth Warren. And I'm going to be honest with you, I absolutely love Elizabeth Warren, but you could see in that moment the necessity of having Bernie Sanders out there out front because he's unshakable on these topics. He is, and we need Medicare for all too much to be wavering and to be shakeable in the face of someone like Donald Trump. And we saw also the opposite from Joe Biden. He couldn't finish his thoughts. He wasn't coherent. And when he was coherent, or when he was able to put together a whole sentence, it was fragmented. He was searching for words. It was difficult. And I'm not trying to knock him because my brain gets tied up these days. The older I get, the more difficult it is to convey complex thoughts without losing my place. I'm just getting old. And there's a point where every sharp mind is no longer going to be sharp. And Joe Biden is in that place. But Bernie Sanders is not. Bernie Sanders is sharp as ever. And I guess it's easy to be sharp as ever when you're saying the same message that you've been saying for the last 30 years. Come on, man. So the person who's going to be unshakable against Donald Trump is literally Bernie Sanders. And I hope that he would pick Elizabeth Warren as his VP. And they go in there and make a difference a once in a lifetime chance to make a difference. Next caller.
Hi, Ben. This is AJ from California, calling back with a very specific question. It's based off of the one episode that you had done a while ago talking about what specifically our foreign policy as progressives needs to look like. And I do think it's very timely considering the fiasco going on in Turkey. And one of the things I'm noticing is there are certain progressive outlets, and I won't name them because I don't want to cause any drama, but that seem to kind of allocate for this idea of, well, we're trying to pull out of these troops anyway, and this might be the one region where it makes sense to maintain a U.S. presence, but there could be some other methods of pulling out because we should stop U.S. involvement in general. I think that seems to ignore some implications of what the Kurds have done for the U.S. in particular, and the precedent that could be necessary to having U.S. maintain any sort of presence there. But overall, I'm curious as to how this situation relates to your episode that you had done a while ago about what our foreign policy should be.
Yeah.
So in this instance, for example, are the progressives that are talking about us pulling out? Are they onto something, in your opinion, or is there something else that we should be focusing on specifically for our foreign policy goals? This is one of the first times I think that there seems to be some controversy, and certain people are saying these progressives are having a hypocrisy because they don't want to pull out of this war, even though they ignore the fact that we're still in Syria. We're just not in the region where the Kurds are individually. So I know it's kind of a rant, but overall, the short version is, let's compare how you would respond to Trump's disastrous decision last week regarding the Kurds towards how we should identify our foreign policy goals as progressives. Thank you. Hope this is finding you well. Have a good day.
I love my audience. I do. And it's a spot-on question. And I like the fact that it moves the ball forward in the conversation. I don't believe that we have a coherent progressive foreign policy, because here's the problem on the international stage. If I can couch it in the theoretical, if not just the theoretical in terms of abstract, but the people who have studied war, the causes of war, and how we prevent war, like the body of knowledge. There's a whole body of knowledge out there. It's called international relations. It's called political science. And for the last few decades of, about 100 years, that of this coherent science, of this science that has progressed. I mean, the intellectual precursors, I'm sorry, I'm going on this tangent, but I have to give context. I do. The intellectual precursors for international relations as we study it today go all the way back to the Peloponnesian War, right? So I'm not saying that political science just started in the last 100 years, but I'm saying that there's a body of science, of growing body of knowledge that is building upon itself, that is accelerated in the last 100 years. And that body of knowledge is centered around the question of what causes war, how do we prevent war, and how do we cooperate and move forward. Now, in the context of those studies, that body of work, the people who have dedicated their lives to studying this, it depends on how you look at the international stage. There's either a problem of power, and the fact that all states are seeking power and amassing power, and that we cannot look at the international stage through the lens of a benevolent actor, because all the actors, meaning the nations on the international stage, are going to amass power so that they could execute their plans for their nation. Or you believe that while there may be a power dynamic, cooperation is the primary method of our interaction on the international stage. And while there is power through military might, there's also economic power. Right. And there's the expansion of economic power, and that the fundamental interaction between nations and states isn't war. It's cooperation. It's trade. Right. That's neoliberalism in international theory. And the first one was neorealism, realism and neorealism. In the context of those two things, we have to have a foreign policy. I know this is a big jump, but there has to be a coherent foreign policy that addresses one of those two possibilities. Now, there's a lot more there. There's a constructivist theory. There's a Marxist theory that says everything is based on class, and that's where people like to couch their understanding. However, they don't address these two underlying issues: nations that pursue power and nations that pursue wealth. And in that context of nations that pursue power and nations that pursue wealth, we will always be in a condition where nations are arming themselves and building their capacity to defend themselves, and building their capacity to expand their goals, to go beyond their borders. There's a natural inclination that we haven't addressed in progressive political. See, while it seems like it's an abstract thing, conservatives, particularly neoconservatives, they have a theory of the world, and they built an entire infrastructure off that theory, and a defense infrastructure. The entire Pentagon, the entire military industrial complex is built off the idea that every nation is eventually going to be our enemy. And so we have to have more weapons than all the rest of them combined. We have to have war making capacity bigger than any of them combined. That is literally the simplified version of the theory that drives neoconservatism in the military industrial complex. And what I'm saying is that we as progressives have not addressed that reality. That reality is like saying, we have to change human nature in order to get this result. No, you're not going to change human nature. And so how are you going to address that underlying reality that so long as there's an actor on the international stage, whether it's America or whether it's Nazi Germany, there are states on the international stage that are pursuing power for a means to an end. And they will always build their armies. They will always build their war-making capacity. They will always build their money-making capitalism capacity. They will always be doing these things. And so, since that is the reality of it, what in the world does our foreign policy look like when our primary goal is the demise or the end of America's war-making power? Now, I've bitten off a whole lot with just this much. This is a whole lot. And I hope that it's making sense. We can always address it again if it's not. But what I'm saying is, let's say we get our ultimate goal of contracting totally the American military machine, ending American empire, closing those 800 bases, getting our intelligence agencies out from every nation, bring home all the spies, all the agents, all the operatives, bring home all the troops, all the weapons, all the nukes, bring them home. And then what happens after that? Because unless you've addressed the fact that there is going to most certainly be another power who goes in and erects the same type of empire, even if I don't care if it's in the name, let's say it's in the name of socialism, but they're going to erect the same type of empire. And what we've seen today, it's both a foreign policy issue as well as an economic issue. What we've seen today is that the people who are building empires, they're not building socialist empires. They are building capitalist empires. So take America off the international stage. If our foreign policy ends, this is the simplified version. If our foreign policy begins and ends with the contraction of the elimination of the American empire, full contraction back to our shores and nothing more, then you have not addressed the fact that we still will have conflict on the international stage. We still will have nations amassing power, because name one time in world history. Can you name one time in world history where we did not have people and nations and states conquering, trying to increase their war-making capacity? So it seems to me that we have a fundamental problem of human nature.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Whoo! Okay, listen. That last caller sent me on a 20-minute rant, and I'm splitting it up in half just to give you a second to breathe. And also to thank all of my newest patrons. Man, you guys showed out last night. I'd like to thank Tyler K for becoming a patron. AJP, AJ, last name begins with P. Thank you for becoming a patron. Adriel H, man, woo boy. Thank you for becoming a patron. And Penelope D, outstanding. You rock. Thank you for becoming a patron. Okay, I'm getting ready to take you back into the second half of answering the question about progressive foreign policy and the problem of us not having a coherent progressive foreign policy. Sorry, this one answer is that long, but it is what it is. Here we go. Human nature with regards to capitalism, but that's neither here nor there. The real problem is we have a penchant to always make war. And because of that, the United States is not the only actor on the international stage that is making war, or has the capacity to make war, or has the incentive to make war. Especially because now more than ever we have more. We have more capitalist countries. We have more major superpowers with the capacity to use their military to enhance their economic capacity, to their wealth. It would be different if they were building legitimate socialist empires. Possibly different, but they're not. They're building capitalist imperialist empires. So we get rid of America. What is your foreign policy at that point? How do you address, as a citizen of the international community, right? Workers of the world unite. How do you address the oppression that happens in the absence of the United States? Do you know how they address it now? They address it by saying America is the cause of all the oppression. Okay, Yeah, no. America is a great evil on the international stage. But there was war before America. There was bloodshed before America. There's going to be bloodshed after America. And right now, neoconservatives have an advantage because they have a really simple, coherent theory of how to operate in all situations. Blow it the hell up and figure it out later. Subvert the government that we don't like and put in one that we like, even if the one that we put in is going to turn around and we'll get blowback from that move. They don't care. For right now, let's get rid of that socialist government and erect a fascist dictator. We're willing to do that. That is their strategy. Their strategy is approach the world through brute force. And it has worked. That's literally why they have institutions erected for, there's an entire city and cities full of nothing but contractors to carry out that theory. Where is the progressive analog to that? Or do we start and we begin with end America? That's what I feel the difference is. I think, okay, now enough of the philosophical musings. Address your question. Progressive outlets that are just saying, oh, this is a good move, they are not considering, and they must, by default, sacrifice human beings who are fighting for their own autonomy. So we have to ignore the fight of other people. We have to ignore their plight. We have to ignore their struggle for liberation in order for us to say all that matters is that America comes home. So if all that matters is that America comes home, then you still have an American-centric view. You do not have an internationalist view because you must vilify the Kurds. You must try to make the Kurds the actual terrorist in this case. And if you make the Kurds a terrorist in this case to justify America coming home, then you have your closed loop theory that is actually completely ignoring our call for internationalism. I mean, if we're going to stand in solidarity with working people around the globe, if we're going to stand in solidarity with oppressed people around the globe, that means we have to stand with them even when it appears as though the great Satan of the United States of America is on their side. Like I'm literally facing people on Twitter now. I saw a tweet yesterday and I just blocked the person because I'm like, I don't have time for it. With plenty of people in their echo chamber liking and retweeting. And they were asking if there's any person on the left that believes that the movement in Hong Kong is progressive, then show yourself. So basically so that we can attack you, because it is incomprehensible to them that the people of Hong Kong can actually legitimately oppose their government, period. Like they live the government of China. Mainland China. They have no legitimate reason to oppose them. And the only reason they're opposing them is because somehow the opposition is coming from the right. I literally have people who believe and confront me and argue with me. Argue me down. I got one guy who's trolling me and clipping my audio and taking my words out of context because he firmly believes that the movement that's happening in Hong Kong is coming from the right. It's coming from the CIA and it's coming from the ideological right in opposition to China. And I have to ask you this question. How much further right do you have to go to be more capitalistic than China? I mean, they're pretty far right when you consider the economics that they pursue. They are fully engaged in trickle-down economics. Literally. How much further to the right do you have to go to suppress religious freedom? And it's because here's the analog. Here's what they say. Like in the United States, we're cool with Islam, but if Islam is in China, then it's radical, and they need to be re-educated anyway. Right? Because that's the only thing that makes sense when you hear some of these people talk. So how much further to the right? Like if the movement coming from Hong Kong is on the right, then how much further than the right could you be than the trickle-down economic policy that China has? How much further right could you be than to the full suppression of Islam in the nation of China? Sending them to re-education camps where they're being brutalized, raped. And then I had some people say, how dare you call them authoritarian? What does the authoritarian even mean? It is literally a form of government where opposition is suppressed by the state. That is the definition of authoritarianism. It's not a mystical, fantastical idea that is just an abstract notion. No, it literally means that you cannot change your government. People believe that we have more of an authoritarian system here in the United States because, you know, the argument goes, and there's a lot of credence to it, is that we actually only have one party that are just taking turns implementing a steady regime of neoliberalism. So if you can see that in the United States, how the bloody hell can you not see that happening in China? They are not engaging in socialism. They are engaging in full-blown capitalism. They have some command in their economy that's being triggered by the government, but it is no more than what we currently have here in the United States and that we have had previously. We have had state planning. We constantly have state intervention in our markets. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is the limitation of progressive foreign policy and progressive economic policy, for that matter, is that right now all that progressives can see is that America is the evil. And what they don't see is that the true evil is that we have not developed a coherent strategy that is actionable. A coherent strategy that is actionable no matter where we are. And because we don't have that coherent strategy, that the strategy begins and ends with the contraction and the destruction of American empire for a lot of people on the left. And I'm just telling you, before that actually happens, I think we would have just destroyed the entire planet, by the way, just for good measure, just to throw that out there. I don't think that there's going to be a revolution that can destroy the American empire without America, like with Donald Trump as president, pulling the trigger on every nuke in our arsenal. That's just a sidestep. But because we can't see the beginning and the ending of progressive foreign policy is the end of American empire. And then the way we justify that is by we're vilifying the Kurds. We're vilifying the protesters in Hong Kong. Everybody, they must be bad. Because the only way we could fit our worldview that America is ultimately bad is by saying that the people who find themselves on the same side as America, or better yet, the enemy of America is our friend. And because the enemy of America must be our friend, because ultimately America is bad, then no matter what that enemy of America is doing, you know, like Syria, no matter what they're doing, you know, like China, which I argue they're not our enemy, right? I argue under no circumstances should we understand China as our enemy. They are actually our co-collaborators on the international stage. But when you think America's evil, you have to see China as good, and China must not be in league with the United States of America because China is good. And because you see that very myopic view of the world, you simply say, oh no, the protesters in Hong Kong, they must be garbage. All right. I went around the world and back again. I hope it made some sense. But yeah, the specifics is that we have to go beyond America being bad, because we have a human condition that has made itself evident throughout mankind, throughout the history of humanity, that shows that even in the absence of America, there are aspiring dictators, would-be dictators, empires that have risen and fall. Name a period in human existence that we did not have in our recorded history, that we did not have an empire influencing international affairs. And as soon as America's off the stage, we're going to replace it. Fine. Give it. You just want to basically just admit, progressives, you just want another empire to have a shot. And what I'm trying to simply tell you is that no, China is not our enemy. China is not our enemy at all. They are actually our sister. They are our sister state. They are mirroring what we're doing. They are expanding their empire. We are interdependent. We need each other's economies. And because we need each other's economies, we're going to never allow ourselves to go to war with each other. Because going to war with each other would mean that we would tank both of our economies, and then the wealth of the elite would be damaged. So there's no way we're going to ever do that. But instead of understanding it in that context, would believe that China is good, America's evil, so that people in Hong Kong who are being supported by Americans, they must be evil too. Not that it would possibly have anything to do with the fact that you have a single party rule that is brutally suppressing dissent. That never caused an organic revolution in world history. Never. Nobody ever gets tired of dictators. Nobody ever gets tired of authoritarian regimes. Nobody ever gets tired of regimes that simply don't give you an opportunity to try something else. Nobody ever gets tired, except for here in America. America is the only place where we would get tired of a single party system that gives us the illusion of an election. They wouldn't dare get tired of a single party system in China that gives you the illusion of an election. Next call.
Hi, Benjamin. This is Vivek from San Jose in California. So I really like your show for the last few years. Have been a patron for you. And this was just calling regarding your take on China and also on the Kurd situation. So, I'm sorry, I'll be a bit verbose. I have some experience of being in such conflicts because my parents and grandparents had to get out of Kashmir. I'm from Kashmir because of being ethnic minority there in that situation. So I understand how complex situations can get. But I feel that I agree generally with your idea that we should support generally human dignity everywhere, wherever this atrocities happen. But the problem is that every nation state happens to be on the right side only by accident many times, and that is especially true about America. And I don't know about that many instances when they are on the right side. But that doesn't mean that, like you said, that China is really not doing anything. They are benevolent and all these kind of things. That's not true. But the few cases in which America turns out to be on the right side, maybe the Kurd situation and perhaps the Bosnia situation, if that, and World War II. But generally, otherwise, Latin America, Romania, and Middle East,
yep.
Generally they have been there. So the problem is that accidentally, if nation states get on the right side, then it becomes very hard to back easily being consistent. For example, Turkey is slaughtering the Kurds, but they raised up the issue of Kashmir, and Pakistan liked it because obviously they are interested in the issue on Kashmir, and Turkey is concerned about human rights there. But India is not concerned so much about it. It's a complex situation. Obviously, they'll take the side of their religious demographic. And Saudi Arabia supports India kind of like not the government because they just are interested in economics there. And similarly, Pakistan, their rights in their minority situation is not good either. But they won't speak up for the issues with their ally like China, the Muslims in China, because they have a good reliance with that. So a lot of economics and geopolitics and
I think one of the reasons I talk so much on my show is because my callers talk so much. He literally, hey, Vivek, thanks so much for the call. I'm just messing with you. You ran out of time and your question got cut off. But I get the sentiment, right? And you're absolutely 100% correct. Like, I have no problem. And this is hilarious. Like, I think in reality, I am one of the biggest critics of the United States of America consistently. Because you can see the hand of America involved, like you said, Latin America. It's easier for us to give the one or two occasions when we've been on the right side than it is to say how many times we've been on the wrong side in America. He listed them: the Kurds, World War II, but I guess the Revolutionary War. It's slim pickings for us to figure out when America has been on the right side. And so this is the thing. This is the thing. America is operating in this globe, on this planet, the way other brutal empires have operated through history. And I would argue that the way we have to find a solution to this is to find a solution to that. What the hell am I talking about? To find a solution to America's evils, we have to address the underlying evils that are consistent through through world history, through recorded history. And this is not to be philosophical or abstract. We have to make it concrete. So the one thing that I know that I can make concrete is to say that we demand that America, one, stop we're doing the right thing when we're yelling at them, at the country and calling out their crimes, their war crimes, and calling out all the things that it's doing wrong. We have to do that, and we have to relentlessly call out America for what it really is. I have to say and legitimately say, goddamn America, like 5 or 6 times a day because of the things that we are doing. And so the people who are benefiting from this country have to be able to shout above our privilege and tell America what the hell we are doing wrong. And then more importantly, how we need to be on the side of right. And not allow the easy, swift boating of saying we're going to get involved for humanitarian purposes when we're really getting involved to get access to their wealth, their oil, their resources. I mean, hell, we rewrite our history all the goddamn time. I mean, we still think Christopher Columbus came to be nice with the natives, the Native Americans, the indigenous people. We still are telling those fairy tales to ourselves. So how long is it going to take us to unravel the truth of why we're in Iraq still today? But we have to start there. We have to start and holistically push back against. But more importantly than just verbally open our mouth and say it, wouldn't it behoove us to actually get in positions of power to act on that? See, this is one of the most self-destructive things I've seen about the left, and which is why I am behind Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, AOC, and to a certain extent Elizabeth Warren, because there's some of her policies like the wealth tax. Yes, sir. We need the wealth tax and then some. But the reason is because as ridiculous and as putrid as we believe American politics to be, the fact is not a damn thing is going to change from the outside. Period. You know why? Because if you're waiting on, to change America from the outside, you're essentially saying you're waiting on a revolution. I believe waiting on a revolution is as fruitless as waiting on Jesus to come back, because you never know when it's going to happen. Maybe it happened in 5 years. Maybe it happened in 5,000 years. I don't know. But also trying to change America from the outside, basically trying to bring America down, right? If that's your solution, if that's what you're waiting for, I've had to say this on the show before, and I'll just try to make it quick. You do realize America is 100% capable of crushing every sector of opposition in the most brutal way, and that America in an instant, in the instant it feels like there's an existential threat from within, it will suspend all of our human rights in order to crush that opposition, a real threat. America has the full capacity to become a brutal dictator, authoritarian state to crush. Now, I'm not just talking about give you the illusion of voting. I'm talking about America would crush dissent in this country the second it becomes a real existential threat. Count on it. You got guns, they've got guns. You get a hold of a Humvee, they got tanks. Maybe you get lucky and you take some tanks, they've got jets. Maybe you learn how to fly some jets. Okay, they've got nukes. Game over. I've done this exact routine on my show before. And that's why you cannot change this system from the outside. And that's why I 100% think our definitive strategy must be to become a part of the system and change it from within. And we're closer to doing that now than ever before with Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Ilhan Omar. And maybe they are not the very best examples of socialists and democratic socialists that you want them to be, but God damn it, they are way further to the left than where we have ever been in recent history. And they represent the shift of the Overton window and the conversation and the ability to talk about programs that actually help people. And more importantly than that, the ability to change the nature of America's participation on the international stage. Here's the last thing I'll say about this. And that's going to be the end of the show. I will say this: because of America's strength, Well, I have to go on a long tangent. I've been working on, well, I'm not working on it anymore because I ran out of money. But before I left my PhD program, I was formulating a hypothesis that I wanted to work on for my dissertation. It's an extension of the power transition theory by, can't remember his first name, but his last name is Organsky. He propositioned back around 1950 that the UC war, and we're not talking about skirmishes, we're not talking about exploitative wars, we're talking about system level changing wars, world wars that take one superpower and turn it into five, and then wars that turn five superpowers and turn it into two, World War II. World War I and World War II. But anyway, we take those type of world changing, system changing, world order changing wars. Those happen when powers, great powers or superpowers, get close to each other power wise. In other words, when we had five great powers on the international stage, Great Britain, France, Spain, Germany, United States, I guess six, Russia, you had six, the Soviet Union, you had, major powers on the international stage whose power was in proximity to one another. It was almost inevitable that was going to result in a system level changing war. And according to Organsky's power transition theory is that anytime you see powers coming, if you have one empire that's coming down, it's in its decline, and you have another empire that's coming up, like we have China and America now, Organsky predicted that that's when they intersect, when their two curves intersect in terms of power, that's when you can expect war. What Organsky didn't calculate for was the impact that interdependent economies has on stability. And so he didn't calculate that the United States was going to need, at least in the readings that I got to, I don't want to say that he never did. That's I didn't read all of his work, so I can't say that. But I did not find in my studies where he calculated for the interdependent economies in which we have more of an incentive to rise together or sustain each other together, because if we go to war, we destroy each other's economies and we destroy the elites. The elites are going to protect themselves. They will stop a war before China and the United States come into power. Okay, why am I mentioning that? I'm mentioning that in the context of this because I think the United States is in a unique position where we can assert something more on the international stage than brute neoconservative war and force in the military industrial complex. Because we are at a stage now in the development of our technology. This is my addendum. This is what I was studying. Is that what we have to offer now, or the position that we are in now, China, the United States, and other nations, we have a war-making capacity that has essentially brought us to a stalemate. We can no longer go to war, a total war. We can no longer we can't have World War III. We can and guarantee you, any power on the outside of the United States that threatens the United States' existence, it's ball game. It's ball game. We cannot go to war with China. China cannot go to war with us. We can't go to war with Russia. All we have is a stalemate in which unless somebody just stupid like Donald Trump pulls the trigger, we're going to be dealing with multiple superpowers on the international stage, all with nuclear capacity. That's the future order of the world. We're not going to have a future where it's just the United States. We're not, as a superpower. China will be a superpower that has influence and reach all across the globe. And so will other nations. I believe you can just summarize it with BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. So anyway, why does that matter? It matters because just like we're not going to be able to force anyone else to do what we say do, we still have the capacity to do good. Because who's going to stop us from doing good? Right? Actual good. But we will never be able to do actual good. Not covering for the CIA, not saying intervention for the purposes of the CIA undermining the government and all the evil shit that we've done over the last however long we've been we've been exporting democracy. Well, I think around 1912, what was the League of Nations, one of our first attempts at spreading American democracy abroad, like Woodrow Wilson, his doctrine, the Wilson doctrine rather. We've been trying to export our democracy through force. And so we have a track record of being on the wrong side of everything. But there is literally not one reason we cannot get inside and change this like a virus on the inside of it and irrevocably change it, because who's going to stop us? If we seize control of the United States, and we seize control of the United States for progress, legitimate progress, and not only taking care of the working class, but ensuring that the working class has irrevocably ending income inequality. Who is going to stop us on the international stage from asserting our force, our might, our economy for good? Who can stop us? But right now, all we're saying is who can stop us from undermining democracies and installing fascism, because they'll increase our profit margin for the quarter. There's nothing from the inside that can really stop the United States, not a rebellion. I think entropy would destroy the United States. Entropy in the form of apathy would destroy the United States first, because America will crush a rebellion. There's nothing on the outside that can destroy America, because we all have the same weapons. We would destroy the earth before we destroy China, and we would destroy the earth before we destroy the United States. That's why they will never go to war. They will always be co-collaborators. But what are they collaborating on now? Capitalism, exploitation of the working class, finding the cheapest source of labor, and suppressing dissent, either through the illusion of election or through just straight brute force. And I'm saying we actually have a chance to change how America carries itself. Why not seize that and change that? Like literally, those are practical steps. It's not our salvation. It's not the only thing that we should be doing. It's not the only thing that we should focus on. But we actually have steps that we can take to change the nature of the United. Otherwise, what are we doing? If we don't think we could change America, what the hell are we doing, man? What the hell are we doing? I'm doing this because I believe that we can fundamentally change America. I have to believe that, because I do not believe that we're going to be able to rebel against America. So we have to change it. Hope that made sense. Very long. Happy Friday, everybody. Let's see how this birthday party goes. I got a surprise. Listen, let me tell y'all something. I got a surprise from my wife on Sunday. Man, y'all might not hear from me for like 3 weeks. Hey, have a great weekend, everybody.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.